Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. New Hampshire's swing 1st District has not swung in several years. A big part of that is the incumbent, Congressman Chris Pappas, who has won 3 terms dating back to 2018. The Republican making the case against him in 2024 joins us this morning. Russell Prescott, welcome and thank you for being here.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you, Adam.
Fundamentally, this is a job interview with the voters. So what can you do for the people of CD1 that Chris Pappas can't?
Well, first of all, make sure that you obey the Constitution. We have the 10th Amendment as part of the Bill of Rights. That says that the states have the right to govern themselves. Chris Pappas has taken that to a step where he has disobeyed his oath of office. He has said, we at the federal level can do better with our voting rights. He wanted to take away our voter rights here to govern our own votes. And I take this very personally because when I was in the state Senate, we passed a voter ID bill by working with the town clerks and also the city clerks to make sure we had a workable voter ID bill for making sure that we had integrity in our votes. What he's done is voted for removing that responsibility with our states, in opposition to a 10th Amendment of our Bill of Rights and wanting to make it a federal issue. This is wrong for New Hampshire. I want to deliver on being able to say we're going to be upholding our law and order. The other part of law and order is we have laws on the books concerning immigration. 10 million people have come over the border in 4 years that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have been in charge of enforcing our laws at the border. We haven't heard a thing from Chris Pappas to say to our administration, administer the laws. The laws were promulgated by both Republicans and Democrats. Make sure we get those laws done because it's creating hardship here in New Hampshire. 2 years ago, when Chris Pappas stood on the stage in a debate, he said, I will stand up to Joe Biden when he's not doing what's good for New Hampshire. He hasn't done that. He hasn't followed through on that. He hasn't done even enforcing our law in terms of the 1974 Budget Act. We need to enforce our laws so we have our subcommittees to go over the appropriations. There's 12 of them, so that we obey the law of our Budget Act and make sure we have a balanced budget, or at least approaching our balanced budget, instead of all of this inflationary spending that Chris Pappas has done. So those items are what is different between myself and Chris Pappas.
Let's circle back to immigration there. Obviously, if he's elected, former President Trump in a second term has promised a mass deportation effort. According to the Pew Research Center, undocumented immigrants make up about 1.7% of New Hampshire's workforce. They're anywhere between an estimated 10 to 15,000. Obviously, a mass deportation in which all of those people are rounded up and taken out of the state could have a tremendous impact on the state's workforce. Are you willing to accept the economic disruption that would come with eliminating all those people who are already here working?
Well, first of all, you cannot have amnesty for people that have arrived here illegally. That is against our law. When we just have to be able to say that, hey, treat them as if they're still at the border and do what is right by our laws. They can't just escape here into our United States and not obey our laws. Those, again, were promulgated by both Republicans and Democrats. Start enforcing our laws. That's what we need to do.
Pappas is on the air right now trying to link you to this Project 2025 document that was put out by the Heritage Foundation in 2022. If folks don't know what it is, it's kind of a policy roadmap that covers just about everything for a incoming Trump administration, although the Trump campaign has kind of distanced themselves from it. There's a lot in it. You say it's unfair for Pappas to try to connect you with this, but is there anything in this Project 2025 document that you really strongly disagree with?
I have not read it. I don't know it, and it's not part of my campaign. It never has been. There's not even any affiliation with anyone with me that is, promoting this. So yes, I'm very disappointed in having, the negativity coming out of Chris Pappas. He wants to say he will be respectful, but he's very unrespectful. He's disrespectful of my views, and my views have nothing to do with whatever 2025 is.
Let's pull out one policy item that's in there. They want to replace essentially the national income tax with a national sales tax. Is that something you would support?
It is something that I would support. Would be something to reduce our taxes for the people of New Hampshire. And I call out Chris Pappas, do not let the Trump tax cuts expire. Make sure they're permanent. That's one thing we must do to promote our economy and make sure that we stay thriving in here in the state. We've already have 30% increase in everything that's across the kitchen table. We need to make sure we don't add an income tax, higher rates for middle class. Let's make sure that we keep the tax cuts that Donald Trump made back in 2017 and make sure that they stay permanent. That's important, and that's another difference between Chris Pappas and I.
But if
he
you
will
could
stand by and let that happen.
If you could eliminate the income tax altogether and replace it with essentially a consumption tax on the national level, is that a good idea?
This is not the right place to discuss that. It would be, again, in those meetings, in subcommittees, talking about the tax policy and working with both sides, Democrats and Republicans. That's when you argue out the differences and where we can come up with a solution.
The bottom line, Democrats are seeking to portray you as an extremist. This is not necessarily your reputation at the State House, so how do you fight back against those attacks?
Well, I'm trustworthy. My wife and I have trusted each other for 42 years of marriage. It's what is the bedrock of my business. People trust that when they cash my paycheck, it's not going to bounce. They trust me when I do multi-million dollars worth of business every single month, that I will pay my bills and that my customers receive a great product. I'm an engineer. I fix problems. When I went to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office with my patent applications, they found out that I was trustworthy, and they gave me 7 different patents. And we manufacture our goods there, supply really good customer service, and highest quality products we can get. That's what I delivered when I went to the State Senate, balancing budgets, making sure that we cut spending rather than increase taxes. And we balanced our budgets, gave a surplus to our state of New Hampshire every year. All these things are based upon honesty and integrity. I'm a trustworthy person, a professional engineer with a blemish, not a single blemish at all on my record, working with the Professional Engineers Society. So that's what we need in Washington, D.C., someone that has integrity, someone that when Chris Pappas is trying to portray me as something that when I become a congressman, I will do, I will not disobey the Constitution, as Chris Pappas has. I will not take rights away from the state that they have the right to make their own laws.
We're coming up on the anniversary of the October 7th attacks against Israel. Obviously, Israel has taken this now beyond just Hamas, and it's becoming more of a regional conflict. If you're in Congress next year, are you still willing to give Israel the green light if this keeps escalating, potentially into a more regional, and some might fear, a World War III style conflict?
You have to realize that they were under attack. They need to protect themselves and bring those perpetrators to justice. That is imperative. That is the rule that must be made. Also, the fact that they are our greatest ally in the Middle East. We cannot let them down. We must stand with them as they stood with us when we were attacked on 9/11. We brought those perpetrators to justice. We did that through a Republican administration and a Democrat administration. We have to join together hands with Israel, just like they joined with us.
On the abortion issue, you said that this is not something that should be decided at the federal level, but there are other members of Congress who disagree. On the Republican side, they'd like to see some kind of national abortion restriction or ban. How do you envision yourself being a part of this discussion or fight if you're already saying, well, we shouldn't do anything about this?
This discussion and fight would be protect and uphold and support our Constitution. That's the pledge that we do. And the Constitution includes the Bill of Rights, which is the 10th Amendment, and that is states have the right to do all their own laws concerning abortion. I will stand there, and if I ever broke my oath of office, my life would be totally in an array where I've always supported the Constitution, always adhered to the Constitution, and then to say when I become a congressman I'm going to stop adhering to the Constitution is wrong. It would never happen. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to leave the responsibilities where they belong, and that is states' rights.
And essentially, if a 15-week ban were to come before Congress, how would you vote?
I would vote no.
Let's touch on one last thing. If you're in Washington next year and former President Trump is the president, is there any issue on which you envision yourself standing up to him?
Always to make sure we are going towards a balanced budget, making sure that we are becoming more energy efficient, independent, and making sure we just enforce our laws at the border and then do a deeper dive into immigration law to make sure we get as many immigrants into the United States as possible so that we have a great workforce and our businesses can thrive, especially here in New Hampshire where we have the lowest unemployment rates in the nation. We need more workforce, and we need to be able to work on our immigration process to streamline that so that people can come to our state and start into our workforce right away.
All right, Councilor Prescott, thanks for joining us on Close Up. We'll see you out there on the campaign trail and then for some debates in a few weeks as well.
You got it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we'll be right back with Congressman Chris Pappas. Stay with us.